Welcome to Q&ASMR. Hello, I'm glad you can make it. These questions are brought to me by listeners like you. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy. This question comes from I Know a Rhino. How many English words start with RH? I think we all know the especially common ones, and we'll get to those, but I think I can find a good list. In fact, I found a dictionary's worth. Merriam-Webster's website has a word finding feature that lets you find words starting with or containing letter strings. We can plug in RH and see what we get. And it's about 745 words. Sort of. See, this list includes varying word forms, rhyme, rhyming, rhymed, etc., which are all unique words, don't get me wrong, but our list can be a little more condensed if we just focus on root words. Similarly, their website doesn't differentiate between medical words, common words, abbreviations, foreign words, and slang. So we can also skip over any of these that are just fancy words for medicines or drugs or non-English words in general. Anyway, as a perfect example, their first RH word is RH. It is usually used as an abbreviation or as the symbol for rhodium. Actually, a lot of these words are Latin words used in medical terminology as the genus of certain species of plants and animals, or as the names of parts of animals. If we exclude all of those, and I will, then the list becomes much more manageable. Here are the common and interesting English words that start with RH. Okay, I'm going to cheat right out of the gate and include rho, the Greek letter, as our first word. The rhea is an emu or ostrich-like South American bird. Rheum is the fancy doctor word for eye boogers. Rhino and the longer rhinoceros, obviously. Rum is either a single bearing course or any point on a mariner's compass. Of course, rhyme, as discussed earlier. There's raisin, which is a garment resembling a cassock, and the reebok, which is a type of African antelope. Rhinal, of or pertaining to the nose, and rhotic, pertaining to a specific English accent having to do with the pronunciation of R's, are both fun words. Rumba is an alternate spelling of the classic Cuban dance. Rhythm, obviously. A rhyton is an animal-shaped ornate drinking vessel of yore. We get a couple of elements of the periodic table, rhenium and rhodium, the latter of which is used to make rhodite. A rhizoid is a root-like structure, and a rhizome is a thick underground plant stem. The rhombus is a shape, rhubarb is a plant, and a rhytina is a now extinct animal called Steller's sea cow. Rhabdoid means shaped like a rod. Rhapsody is a type of epic poem or type of music, depending on your usage. Rheobase is the minimal electric current required to excite a tissue. Rheology is a science dealing with the deformation and flow of matter. A rheostat is a resistor for regulating current with variable resistances. Rhetoric is the art of speaking or writing effectively. There are, obviously, hundreds of other RH words out there. Many of them use these root words to create adjectives, adverbs, and other word extensions to make some truly ridiculously long words. Some of these long medical terms are fascinating to attempt to read, let alone pronounce, and I do suggest you give this a shot, either with RH or any letter combo you think would be fun. Thanks for that excellent question. This next question comes from Dala. So what are all the different breeds of cat? Well, not nearly as many as there were for dogs, let me tell you. But, as ever, I shall endeavor to name them all. This time, we're using the list of cat breeds I found on cats.com, starting with the A's: Abyssinian, Aegean, American Bobtail, American Curl, American Longhair, American Polydactyl, American Shorthair, American Wirehair, Asian Semi-Longhair, and Australian Mist. Then we get to the Balinese, Bengal, Burman, Bombay, Brazilian Shorthair, British Longhair, British Shorthair, Burmese, and Burmilla. Up next, the California Spangled Cat, the Chantilly or Tiffany Cat, Chartreux, Chowsea, Cheeto, Color Point Shorthair, Cornish Rex, and the Cymric. The Devon Rex, Donskoy, and Dragon Lee are all there is for D. The Egyptian Mau, European Shorthair, and Exotic Shorthair are all there is for E. And there are no cat breeds that begin with the letter F. G appears to only have the German Rex. H has the Havana Brown and Himalayan, and I has no cat breeds. J has the Japanese Bobtail and the Javanese. Korat and Karelian Bobtail are the only Ks, and L only has La Perm. Up next is the Maine Coon, Manx, the Minuet, formerly the Napoleon, and Munchkin. Then we have the Nebelong and the Norwegian Forest Cat, which brings us to the Ossicat, Ojos Azules, Oregon Rex, Oriental Bicolor, Oriental Longhair, and Oriental Shorthair. After that is the Persian, Peterbald, and Pixie Bob. There are no Q cat breeds. Then we get to the Ragamuffin, Ragdoll, Russian Blue, and Russian White, Black, and Tabby. S has quite a few with Savannah, Scottish Fold, Selkirk Rex, Serengeti, Siamese, Siberian, Singapura, Snowshoe, Sokoki, Somali, and Sphinx. Next up is the Thai cat, also known as the Old-Style Siamese, the Tonkinese, Toiger, Turkish Angora, Turkish Van, and Turkish Vankadisi. Lastly, we get to the Ukrainian Levkoi, the Ussuri, and finally, the York Chocolate. Wow, that sure was a lot more than I was expecting. Thanks for that great question. This last question comes from Bob. How many different tax documents does the U.S. have? Shockingly, less than I expected. Of course, as with all things governmental, this may depend on how ultra-specific we want to get in our descriptions. Anyhow, Tax Day USA was last week, April 15th, so I suppose this is the source of your question. For most of us, the form we are filling out is a 1040. This is the individual income tax return form. The reason I mentioned specificity earlier is because this form has about 26 or so attachments that can be added for different classifications of income or different earned credits. They are called schedules, and it appears that Schedule L and M have since been phased out. The rest are Schedule A, B, C, D, and the subsequent form 8949, E, EIC, F, H, J, R, SE, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 8812. On the flip side, if your income is easy to calculate, you can use one of the two short form 1040s, the 1040A or the 1040EZ. Or, to make it more complicated again, you might file a 1040ES, a 1040NR, or a 1040NREZ. If you have to correct any mistakes on most of these, that's a 1040X. Fiduciary reporting generates a Form 990, or a 990EZ, or a 990PF, which can all have a Schedule A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, or R. You might also get a Form 5500. Forms 1065 and 1041 are used for estates and partnerships. The 1120 series of forms is used for corporations of various types. They can also have an 1120, 1120S, 1120C, and an 1120H. It looks like employers have their own series of documents to file, forms 940, 941, 942, 943, 944, and 945, all to do with annual or quarterly unemployment tax returns or withholdings. Forms 706 and 709 are used for estate taxes and gift taxes. Then we get to the information forms. These forms aren't necessarily turned into the government, but the information within is used to fill out the other forms. 1095A, B, and C are all for health insurance. 1098 and its subforms 1098C, E, F, MA, Q, and T all appear to be about other regular payments, loans, or charitable contributions like mortgage and mortgage assistance, student loans and tuition, and vehicular donations. The W forms are probably the ones most familiar to everyday Americans. The W-2 is the standard wage and tax statement. There's also a W-1, W-2G, W-3, W-4, W-5, W-6, W-7, W-8BEN, W-9, W-10, W-11, and W-12. These are used for all kinds of different information pertaining to wages, hiring practices, tax IDs, and much, much more. The 5498, 5498 ESA, and 5498 SA forms are used for various kinds of retirement or saving information. Any other kinds of income go on one of the many, many 1099 forms. This could be a 1099A, B, C, CAP, DIV, G, H, INT, K, LTC, MISC or MISC, NEC, OID, PATR, Q, R, S, or SA. Or it could be an SSA 1099, RRB 1099, or an RRB 1099R. Or, if you're a non-resident alien or other foreign national, you'd get a 1042S, or an SSA 1042S, or an RRB 1042S. Finally, there are a few other forms for a variety of notices, changes, or odd income. These are forms 2553, 2555, 4868, 8822, 8850, 8889, 8917, 8936, and 8962. Now, this is not a complete list. The site I'm gathering this information from says there's over 100 different tax forms used by the IRS, and I can't possibly cover, let alone understand them all. Also, as a bit of fun trivia, I am not using the IRS's website for this list. I could not find an easily accessible list of every document they use when I was navigating their site, so I went to my old favorite, Wikipedia. I hope you remember to file your taxes, and that your return was large. Thank you again to I Know a Rhino, Dala, and Bob. If you would like to have your question answered in a video, leave it in a comment below this one. If you would prefer to ask your question a little more privately, you can email me your question at questionsandasmr@gmail.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more questions like these every week. Thanks again for listening. Goodbye for now.